Welcome, guys, to Metallarian Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Compass. Well, in general, all discography, because all the three albums is very in short way. We have the first one, now the second was Theory and Thighs, and the third one, the Silent Symphony, released at the end of the year of the last year. So let's start with how was the band been during how was the reception of this new album compared to the previous ones?
Go on, Ben.
Well, we've been really, really blown away really by the response. I think this album has probably reached a slightly different demographic. I think with a different label as well. But I mean, we've been blown away by it really. I think we always strive to do things differently and within the same Compass sound, but improve each album, and I think this one is our best yet. I know that's a cliche, but I really do think the songs here are our strongest, and I think the comments and reviews we've received so far have really been really amazing. So we're really happy by it.
Yeah, we had a discussion just before we came on to see you, Xavier, and we just talking about the kind of response from people and how it's started to make people's end of year lists. But of course, because it was so late in the year, I think people are going to take a little time to catch on to this. We think it's going to be a bit of a slow burner, really, because it is different from our last album. But inside all that, there's still melody and there's still a lot of power and everything else with the lyrics and the music and stuff. So.
Okay. I saw one starting with a question that Ben said about now you are now that's records, but before you are. I think you work independently. Is you with a label, just like a business. I saw the first and two albums was released by the Music Shop, but I think this label is like a market. It's not like a label as we know. So how was the enter to the now for the new label in this case? Now that's records, and compared to the previous ones, and how do you decide to release the first two by yourself? I think.
We did have a label for the first two. The label was called Escape Music in the UK. We just didn't feel that we got the correct distribution from what we were doing, really. And when I say that, Escape Music were very much into melodic rock and kind of push their artists into that kind of genre of music. As you know, there's many different genres of rock. And I just personally felt that we weren't getting the right exposure to the right kind of fans. So to be totally honest with you, after the second album, I said to Ben and the rest of the guys in the band, I just said, let's just seek someone else who's going to do a better job of getting us into the ears of people that really like the more metal, the more kind of progressive rock music. And I did a search and I found, I actually searched through a band called Anubis Gate, who I love the band Anubis Gate, and they were signed to No Dust Records, and I thought, okay, let's give them a shot and see what happens. And Hank just came straight back to me, knew of the band, knew my previous work with Newman as well, and loves and has all my albums and loves that. So it was a kind of a match made in heaven, really. So he was right behind it from the word go. And as I said, he's been able to push it into the ears of people who are much more into kind of progressive metal and stuff, and that's kind of where we want to be as a band. It's all very well having good albums out, and I, as we said before, I believe same as Ben, we've got really strong albums here, but they need to be listened to and they need to be into the ears of people who really appreciate it.
Okay. Well, all the detail about the discography of the band is, I remember when I hear for the first time Our Time on Earth, I remember that I contact you to Facebook Messenger, say where I can buy this album, because I really like the first album. Where I can buy the first one. Then the second one is the same situation. About you mentioned me that's one of the reasons that you left the previous label, because it's not good. It's not good for the promotion for the album. But talking about now from this new album, especially, I didn't know to change, because for me the bands follow the band since Our Time on Earth. I remember the band voice was more lyrical, with more high tones in this case, more classic, But when I hear this new album, the thing changed apart from the new level. Is this album is more metal, more metal than the previous one, more dark. This album is more darker, and also your band's really different from the first one. Your voice is more like more darkness. I feel that in some way you are you are feeling completely the lyrics that you on this link and on this new album. So for that, how was the composition process, and what time do you decide to change the way of the create music with Compass? Because I mentioned it, the first two more progressive rock with metal parts, but now it's more a progressive metal band.
Just go on, Ben.
Yeah, I think just I think the darkness. I think it's been kind of governed by the concept. It's a dark subject matter, and the music really fits with that and the kind of storyboard of what happened and what continues to happen. And I think that's where we've gone with it. And I think the sounds in which Steve's created and the guys in the band have made. And I think it all fits really nicely. And I think, vocally, you touched on it. I think, I really did get inside this album. I really truly believed what I was singing, and I think as I did on the first two. But I think, it's obviously a different kind of vocal with the darkness. You have to kind of bring that into it a little bit. It's not it is melodic, but it's a dark subject matter, so you have to kind of portray that as well. Yeah,
very much so. Yeah, very much so. That the message and the concept behind the album dictates the kind of music that it's going to be. I've never, because I was in a band, and I'm still doing the solo kind of stuff with Newman. I was governed within a certain criteria of what to write, melodic rock, and couldn't come outside those boundaries really. So Compass has given me the opportunity to really stretch out, and I always said at the beginning, and I said to Ben, that no two albums are going to be quite the same Compass, because we just need them to be very different to each other, And I think this, as Ben quite rightly says, the subject matter kind of takes that a lot as well, especially if they are concept albums like the last two have been. So obviously, Theory of Tides was about Galileo, and this one is about the Chernobyl disaster. So, yeah, very much so. And Ben does, I'm going to say it, Ben does kill it on this new album.
Okay. Now, talking about, especially from the lyrics, I feel that the lyrics are like a wake-up call about everything that is happening, as you mentioned, Ben, in the world right now, because I feel the war, I feel the darkness, this kind of aspect that I mentioned in the previous question. So, in relating to this, how does it affect the outside world and the composition process at the time you create the lyrics?
That's a good question, actually. Obviously, I can't even remember how many songs are there on the album. 9, is it? I think, and 8 of the songs are really closely kind of tied into the Chernobyl disaster and the kind of the timeline through that disaster. The last song, Age of Progression, is the song where I wanted to lyrically is take a real kind of similarity between what happened 40 plus years ago to what's happening today, but also not only that, but give it a little bit of hope and a bit of lightness and a bit of kind of even within the music. And I find it, the more that I looked into this and the more that I looked at the kind of rhetoric that was coming from Russia about everything that they're doing at the moment, I was amazed about some of the almost repeated kind of answers to questions 30, 40 years ago that's happening now. And I found it incredible. And to write a song in that kind of vein, to kind of really highlight that, I thought was really important. And it gives a kind of a hope at the end of the album as well. And I think you couldn't write an album like this, especially with what's going on currently in Ukraine, without touching on that subject. But I didn't want to pull that away too much from the real subject of what happened, in Chernobyl in 1986. So.
Okay. Now talking about especially, I didn't know one thing about the Compass, because Compass and social media are under the line, the media in general, because I don't know why, because since the beginning, for me, the band need to talk more attention about the media, because as I mentioned it in even when I wrote you on the Facebook page, says love your band, because I really like to do an interview since the first album. That's the end. Searching this interview has come to an end with this one. So why do you think the band in general has no more presence into the media? Because your music is good, your music is very, very good. The three albums are very solid in what way. So for you, what do you think about now about this, about why Compass is not in the press in general?
Probably because there's a million other bands out there, and there's so much competition from just loads of different areas. I'm not going to run down the path of saying that music's kind of throwaway, but there is just so much music around, and to be honest, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's kind of good for a band like us, because we have managed to do 3 albums and we have recorded and we do have a following. But you're right. I mean, I don't think the label that we were with to begin with helped that in any way. I'm hoping that things might change with this new album and we go into this new year and people are starting to come. I've found that this is kind of a slow burner with an album, and people are coming back to us and giving us some really good compliments on it and things. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I sort of followed on. I think the first 2 albums were kind of stalled a little bit by the label and their lack of kind of output, if you will, and input. But I think this new label, We've Got No Dust Records, I think they are pushing it, and you can see that in the people that are commenting on social media. Like you say, it's people are saying, never heard of you guys before, but wow, what an album, or thank you to whoever for sharing this, because this is amazing. How have I not heard of you? So I think we're slowly getting there, and we're going to keep pushing it, and we will get in front of the right people, which is happening. But like Steve says, I think when people do listen to it, it's not an instant thing. It's a few listens, and then you hear more, and then you enjoy it more, and you hear different parts to it. It's not one of those albums you can listen to start to finish and that's it, put it on the side. You go back to it, and that's what we're finding with certainly with the comments we're receiving is, it's taken me a few listens, but this is incredible music. So that's great. So we're going to keep pushing and see what the future holds.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All the detail that I saw since the beginning. Well, especially for me, I'm a metalhead from the 80s, and I love when a band release the music, you want to see the band alive. That's normally because you want to see the songs alive, these kind of aspects. But when I tried to find more information about when Compass will do a gig or perhaps a tour, I can find it. Even I entered your to Instagram page. No, you don't have Instagram page, just Facebook page in this case. I tried to find more information, perhaps on YouTube, this kind of, but nothing. So why did you decide to put this project as a studio project, and why not with live presentations? Because the 3 albums are very solid to represent live.
Yeah, we have been offered. We've been offered a couple of shows. Just recently. The unfortunate part about this is there's just not the kind of funding to get a band. It was in Europe. There's not the kind of funding to get a band into Europe. I've just come out of playing in my band Newman, and I've got 10, 12 albums as a backlog, and I have toured with Newman and stuff. But we still couldn't make ends meet when it came to funding and everything else and going into Europe. So whether the traction will happen for Compass and whether we will get to the point where people are screaming for us to play and offering us the right kind of money to fund what we need to be able to do to bring a production like this onto a stage, then maybe, and then we can look at things like that. But for the time being, it's a studio band. And we all do our own things as well. We're happy doing our own things. We'll just see what happens and whether this this third album might generate enough interest to get us out there and playing. I certainly love to, and I know that Ben's, very keen to do it if we can do it. And as I said, get the right funding for the right kind of production to put our music, out there in front of people, because it has to be great and it has to be as big as it is on the album.
Okay. One detail that I always note is the difference between the progressive bands that come from England and the bands come from United States. That's very, very notable in this aspect. And one of the things that I really like about Compass is that you mix the progressive rock from the England, from the golden era of the progressive rock, and golden era from but at the same time you put elements like Quincy Rights, the elements from Sabotage, bands from the second wave of the progressive, of the first wave of the progressive metal around the world. So in this case, who came with the idea to mix both different guys? Because I hear a lot of bands from England, and always, especially in metal and rock, and always lean down to the stuff of Pink Floyd, the bands, the golden era for rocks. But when I hear Compass, you have both. In this album, there's more American sound than the England sound.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's got probably a lot to do with some of the modern metal that I'm probably listening to. But my influences go, as you quite rightly say, my influences go right back to bands like Pink Floyd. I was into Pink Floyd before I was into melodic rock, and before I started this journey in kind of melodic rock and things. But I as a producer, because I produce a lot of albums as well for other people and write for a lot of other people, I always keep my mind open to different production techniques and everything. And I think that's probably where it's all got to the point where I started to listen to more kind of metal orientated stuff and everything else, and got into modern production techniques to kind of record in that way. And I've discovered some great bands, progressive bands and everything else. I just felt that at the time, I think melodic rock just didn't offer enough for me. It was very standard. It was very verse, chorus, verse, chorus, guitar solo, chorus out, done, dusted. And I've tried to put some progressive elements, even in the Newman stuff that I do, but nothing anywhere near what Compass has achieved, And I know as one of the main writers, I can kind of push that in so many different areas. One thing I will say though is with the format of Compass, because of Ben's voice and the way he sings, which he's got, and I don't know if Ben's going to agree with me, got a very a soul voice really, and he's not a metal singer. So I find it great that the music kind of comes down to accommodate his voice, and then goes into these crazy little arenas and areas within the music, because it gives it an incredible light and shade, which is probably where you pick up on this Pink Floyd and kind of the old school kind of melodic, Pink Floyd progressive kind of thing, Genesis kind of area and stuff like that. But then obviously you've got you're kind of offsetting that with some very kind of in your face kind of metal along the lines of Anubis Gate and bands of that kind of ilk.
Okay. Well, having a voice, especially for these questions go to the Ben. Having a voice in the progressive metal is very important, because, as you know, Ray Adler from Faith Warren has a personal voice. The first vocalist from Faith Warren also has a personal voice. John Ark has a personal voice. James LaBrie has a personal voice. It's important, very important for the progressive metal scene. So and for this question, Ben's go to, how do you see in the future? Perhaps your voice will have this kind of personality, in compared with a lot of vocalists appears now in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think I come from a kind of soul blues background really, so what it's been great for me is I've kind of learned a whole new way of singing. But I think what I've always had, and I think probably why I got the gig to sing for Compass, is I kind of I like to think I can tell a story with my voice. So that's something that I've got, and I think that I'll always have that, I hope, because that's just why I do it, because it connects me. But I'm continuing to learn every album. I think listening to the first album to this album, it's you know, I can hear it in my voice. It's growing, and it's maturing, and it's going to new places that I've not been. So yeah, I think, you know, as we continue, it's going to continue to change, but it'll still remain a storytelling vocal, and something that, because I you know, my vocal heroes are guys that can just connect with you through their voice, and that's what I've always aspired to do. So and I hope that comes across. So yeah, it's I'm always learning. Yeah, to answer your question, and yeah, we'll see, you know, what the next album brings.
I try and work him hard.
Okay. And Steve, how was to select a band as a voice from Compass? Because England has a lot of great vocalists, and obviously, as mentioned, Ben came from other background, jazz, blues, no metal and rock in there. So how was the key to, or how was the main element that you saw in him to say, hey, will be the voice from Compass?
Yeah, I mean, I put out an advert. I just thought that there's so many inner talkings with people that are in bands and things. Oh, do you know a vocalist that would be able to do this and that? I decided to do something different, and I just advertised. I advertised on social media, and I got a lot of responses. And I got responses from a lot of people in Europe, and there was a couple of singers who were unbelievably high range metal singers, and absolutely, you know, on fire. And then there was a couple of singers from the UK. My biggest problem with the singers that were singing the metal side of things were one of them had a very distinctive accent and within his vocal, and because the idea behind Compass was to portray stories and things, I felt that may hinder, you know, where these lyrics were coming across. As soon as I heard Ben's voice, I just knew that he was going to be the voice of Compass, just simply because his diction and everything else, and the way that he produced and actually came across lyrically and musically around what he was trying to do, around the songs and everything. I just felt that he just could offer so much more. And also, there were a few singers that were very well known within the melodic rock fraternity. One that was very well known in the metal fraternity. And I wanted to use a vocalist that had never been heard before, or very rarely, because I think Ben's got a unique voice, and it's very unique to Compass. And I think that's a really good thing. Is that not only is Compass a new band, we do things maybe in a slightly different way. I can just come around and say we're completely original. Obviously we're not. We have big influences from a lot of different bands, but what makes us a little bit different is Ben's voice. In the same, my background is melodic rock, so that's kind of got a bit of influence on it as well. So for those two reasons, I think we're slightly different to maybe a pure kind of metal band with a metal singer and everything else. We have a slightly different take on what we can do. Sometimes I suppose in the other side of the coin is that we can't go thrashing on and do a thrash metal song with Ben singing a 4-octave range and flying things out, but it's not required for what we do. There's enough metal in what we do, musically and instrumentally, and I think that if we were slamming through a song with Ben screaming lyrics, the whole point of those lyrics is lost for me. And if you come out of the thrashiness and the guitar solos and everything else, and come to a portion and a piece of music which has got enough space for Ben to actually emote the lyrics across that, I think it has much more impact than a wall of sound.
Okay. One detail that you mentioned, Steve, is that for Compass you took influence from new bands, especially for this new album, and that's funny because when I talk to new school musicians and in any style of metal, especially, they took influence from old bands, and it's funny that people from old bands listen like you are all in the you are all musicians for this, but you are hearing new bands. It's curiously, but because the new bands hearing the old bands, and the old musicians hearing the new bands. It's very curious this situation. So for this, especially into the into progressive metal, you mentioned that you hear new bands, and also, but the new bands just hear the first four bands from the metal or the golden era from the progressive rock. It's curious, very curious. So for this, do you think that the progressive metal is the only style that has no limits to continue creating new things compared to the other styles in the rock and metal?
Yeah, I mean, some of the new bands that I've been listening to, I mean, when I say new, I mean, to be honest, I was listening to melodic rock, and I still do, and I still like good melodic rock. But I heard a band called Pagan's Mind, God's Equation, and that album singly just changed my whole thought process on where I wanted to go for if I was to ever start another band, which I could kind of capitalize and move out to a different kind of sphere. That was probably the catalyst. That album, God's Equation, was probably the catalyst that said to me, "This is just so good. I need to do something which opens those boundaries up as well." And I think that opened my mind to as you say, a lot more of the later metal bands like Anubis Gate, Pyramaze, and these kind of bands, and Terra Maze as well. And yeah, I just think that I mean, saying that, I mean, my old influences. I mean, I can hear on this new album, I can actually hear some Black Sabbath. I don't know why, but I can hear Black Sabbath in some of these songs as well. So and Judas Priest. Judas Priest are one of my favourite bands growing up as well, so I do have some metal influences with Judas Priest and the Iron Maiden and things like that. I don't know about Ben. I don't know if he really, and it's before your time though, isn't it? You're about half the age of me.
Yeah. And I was brought up on classic rock, those kind of guys really, but more kind of my dad got me into that sort of stuff. But I think when we record, we after the sessions we'll go and listen to music, and Steve has opened my eyes to new bands, if you will, that aren't new but are new to me, and these newer bands, and you can hear Steve's got a great ear, and he can pull from influences like that, and and it's opened my eyes to that world as well. So and I think that's why Compass is the way it is because we're pulling from loads of influences all over really, and it's not a kind of a traditional metal album in that sense. It's progressive, of course it is, and it's sort of a lot of things going on, but it all makes sense. And I think the music that we both listen to is in the Compass album in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for this. Also, well, we are very closer to end this interview, guys. And for this aspect, what kind of plans do you have in general for Compass? Because I saw that the band it's not promoting with live concerts the albums. So, but what kind of plans do you have? Perhaps record a new album, perhaps your first gigs. Who knows?
Yeah, world domination, really, Xavier. Yes, that's we got something a bit different in the works, which I'm working on at the moment. I'm doing a lot of other production work for the label that I'm working for. So there's a lot of other bands that I've got a bit of work to do with. But Ben's involved in a few bits with that as well. So we're keeping ourselves busy. We're gonna let this third album soak for a little bit. We don't have any immediate plans to start writing or recording a new album It's too early in the day at the moment for us. So we're just going to let this album, take a slow burn and see what happens, really. And as I said, if that culminates in somebody offering us enough money to go out and play the thing live, then so be it. Never say never.
Okay. Well, guys, the sad times arrived at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me. As I mentioned it more than 4 times, love your band since the beginning. I remember that I tried to get this first album in 2020 during the pandemic. It was very, very hard to find a CD to send to my country, but I did it. I got it. So it's a great album. I just waiting for the arrival in the third album. So perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Metallurium followers?
Yeah, I mean, thanks guys. Thanks very much for the support. It's always appreciated. Bands like Compass kind of thrive and survive on people's feedback and people's comments and everything else. So it's really good.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and thank you for your time tonight. And it's more exposure for us. So thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Great.